In this video, I'm going to be showing you how to use DataStore2, which is an alternative to normal data stores, and hopefully it will prevent data loss in your game. So let's get started. Welcome back to another video. My name's AlvinBlox. If it's your first time on my channel, make sure that you've clicked on the subscribe button and you've hit the notification bell so you never miss out when I upload a brand new video. So today we will be looking at this DataStore2. So I've got this dev forum post on my screen and I'm going to leave a link to this in the description of the video because this is a really useful module. And the point of it is it's similar to, well, it's data store. It will save your data, you can tell it what data to save, and it's more reliable. In case of data stores going down, this data store system will make a backup of your data store to prevent data loss, as you can read down here. It says data stores will fail through the fault of Roblox. There's nothing you can do about it. Data store now has something to deal with it. You can use backup APIs, so up here you can see there's some backup in the API section here. You can see this backup, where is it? Actually it's down here. Okay, so backup, set backup, clear backup. It allows you to make a backup of data in case it gets lost, which is pretty cool. And it's also a bit easier to understand if you find data stores a little bit confusing. So we're going to be going over this today, how to use it, and a bit of an example setup, because there are a few people who don't really understand how it works. So first things first, you're going to want to go to Roblox Studio and you're going to want to firstly get the module. Now I'm going to leave a link to the module in the description of this video. You want to take it as a free model and insert it into your game through the toolbox, and then it should appear in the workspace here. I'm just going to put mine in server-script service. Now we're not actually going to be requiring the module in game. We're going to be actually downloading it from the web by saying require and then the asset ID. But if you wanted to test this in Studio, it'd be much easier to use the main module object because there might be a little bit of a delay while the module is downloaded and it may not work. But we'll get onto that later on. So we're going to create a system which will save a player's points and load them into the game when you rejoin. So let's insert a script into server-script service. I'm going to make it a little bit bigger and I'm going to show you how this data store system works. So first thing that we need to do is require the module. So we can say local DataStore2 equals require, and then you want to get the asset ID of the module, and this is actually in the dev forum post which we just shared, so I'm going to go get that for you. Alright, here we are, and we're just going to copy this require and we're going to just paste it back into Studio. And we have now got the module. So what we want to do now is define a default value, okay? So whenever our player joins the game, if they're a new player and we want to try and load their points, but they've never actually played the game before, we want to give them a default amount of cash for them to start off with. So let's give them 100 cash. So if you want to give them 500, you could change this to 500. It's up to you. Now, how this works is you have to define a key in the data store. So we need to insert a player added event here. So whenever a new player joins the game, we can set up their key and we can check to see if they've got some data. So we're going to say local points data store for this player equals, and then we can just get the module DataStore2, and we can just say inside these brackets, we can say points, because that's the name of our key, comma PLR. So this is the name of our key for this player. Now, if you've done normal data stores, you'll know that you'll have to have a key which is unique to each player. So for example, the key may look something like this. So user, and then it may have their user ID like this. So it looks something like that. Well, with this DataStore2 system, the module, so you can actually name the keys the same thing for each player, and the module will deal with making it independent for each player, making it unique. So we don't actually have to, we shouldn't make this unique to each player. It needs to be the same. So we can just call ours points for this player, and all of the players in the game, their key can be called points, and the module will deal with each key being separate. which is pretty cool. I like that with this module. So we're going to insert some leader stats into the game. You should be able to do this already, but if not, this is how it works. So I'm just going to add, I'll just copy these in to make it a little bit quicker. Just insert some leader stats into the player and creates a points value. So how this data store works, it's quite different to normal data stores, because usually we update a value, so we could update a points value in our player, and then whenever the player leaves the game, we will save that value. So we save the current value of the points to the data store. Well, the difference with DataStore2 is that from what I've been playing around with it, what happens is you update the data store, the value which is stored in the data store, and then whenever that value gets changed, the script will update your points value. So it's actually the data store getting changed first, not the actual value which is going to be saved, if that makes sense. So we don't actually want to say, you know, points.value equals data store get async as you usually would. I'm going to show you how it works. So when we want to update a player's points, for example, we can either set the points to a complete new value, or we can increment their current value by a specific number. So say they had 50 points saved and then we incremented 500, their points would change to 550 because 500 got added on to the current balance. But if the points were currently set to 50 and we set 500, the points would just change to 500, set to a brand new value. Now, the way that we do this is I'm going to actually insert a part into the game, and this is just for an example. So let's just make a part, we're going to make it red, and I'm going to insert a click detector into this part. And what we're going to do in this script is when this click detector has been clicked, so we can say game.workspace wait for child part dot mouse click detector dot mouse click connect function. Okay, so this is an event which is going to connect this function and run it whenever the player clicks on that red brick. So we can say player has clicked the red brick, and we want to pass the player that actually clicked this brick. Okay, so player. So we've got the player object now, and what we want to do when they've clicked this, we want to increment their currency by 50. So we want to add 50 onto their current points balance. So instead of just saying player.leaderstats.points.value equals player.leaderstats.points.value plus 50, for example, or 60, I wrote 60 up here, whoops. So instead of doing this and just updating the points value, we want to actually increment their data store value, which is being saved. And then whenever this data store value gets updated, we can whenever it's updated, we can change the points value. So instead of doing that, we're going to get their key. So we can say local points data store equals DataStore2, and then we want to get their key, which is points, and we want to pass the player object. So we're getting the points key for this specific player, and then what we're going to do is we're just going to say, because what we want to do, we want to increment their points, we can say points data store. So this will be the current data which is stored for this player, for that key. We can say colon increment, and inside of here, what we can do is we can put a value inside of here. Okay, so 50. So we want to increment it by 50, and we also want to put a comma and a default value. Okay, so we can just say default value. Okay, so in case there's no data there, we can just make sure that they have a default value of 100 points. Otherwise, we can increment their data store by 50 points. So that will have increased the saved data in that key by 50. What we need to do now is create a callback function which is going to run whenever the data store has been updated, and inside that function we can update the player's points value to to what has just been updated in the data store. So we can do local function, and we can call this function points updated. And we want to pass here, we want to put in the brackets, we want to put the updated value. So this is what the data store is going to be worth now. Okay, so this is what we want to update their points to. So we can just say points.value equals points data store, and we can say get updated value. So what we're doing here is we're doing a little get request on this data store. So we're getting the data store with that key, and we're saying, we're saying get, okay, and that's getting the latest value from that data store. But if there is no if there's no value there, what we can do, well, actually we want to get that the value from the data store and the default value. If there is no data there, we will pass a default value to begin with. So we're going to say points update, and then we just want to give the default value, just like this. So the first time that the player joins the game, this is going to call the local function here, and it's going to check to see if they've got any data, and if they haven't, we're passing through this default value of 100. So if they haven't got any data, their points will be set to 100. So instead of having to check to see whether the data is not equal to nil, and then if it is, then we can supply if it isn't, then we can supply a default value. We can just pass through the default value here, and it does it for us. Now we want to make this function trigger whenever the data has been updated. So currently it's only going to run once when they join the game. So we want to say points data store, and then we want to say :on update, and we can pass through points updated here. Points update. There we go. So this is the function which is going to run whenever the points have been updated. And if you look on the dev forum post, it actually says on update adds a callback function used every time that the cached value updates. So basically, when the value has updated in your data store, we'll call that function and update the points value. So let's just go over this script again, and I can tell you everything that's going on. So at the top, we're getting the data store module. No, this is not. We're not actually getting the data store service. We're then defining a default value, which will be given to the player if they've never played before, or if no data can be found. We're then getting the data store for this specific player using the key points, but we can use the same key name for different players because the module will handle making it unique for each player, which is pretty cool. We're then inserting some leader stats and points so that we can see if they save and load. And then we've got a local function here called points update, and whenever this function is called, it will get the latest value from the data store and set it to the player's points value. And you can see we are passing the argument of updated value, and that will be the current amount of points that they have. But if they don't, if no data has been found, then we can give them a default amount of cash, which is 100. So if the get request does not find anything, we'll just give them 100 cash. And then we are just binding this function up to this event here on update. So whenever the data store has been updated, we can call this and it will get the latest amount of points from the data store. So what's happening is we're not actually updating the points value, we're updating the data store, and then we're getting the latest value from that data store and setting it to the points value. So we're not actually updating the points and then saving it, we're updating the data store and then loading the value from that data store. So that is how you do point saving with this module. Let's go and test it out in a game, and that actually brings me on to a point here. Now, if you're watching this video just after it has been released, so in the first week maybe, you actually won't be able to use this in Studio. It doesn't actually work in Studio at the moment. Well, it kind of does work, but it just doesn't save the data when you leave because of some issues which is going to be patched in the next Studio update. So if you're watching this a few months after, don't worry about this. What you can do to make this work in Studio is you can go into the module here, and you can create a value in server storage called save in Studio. It needs to be a bool value, save in Studio, and it needs to be true. And this will tell the script that you want it to save in Studio as well as in game. So you'll want to use the main module. You want to insert it into your game. Don't use require. Because if you use require and you try it out in Studio, it might not be downloaded fully by the time the player's in the game. So you could either add a wait, which would be kind of like a hacky solution because the servers may be slow. But I recommend, instead of using this ID for play solo, you just insert the module to your game and say game.serverScriptService : wait for child main module, just like this, and then it should work. But if you just want to test it in a real game, want it to work in your real game servers, just use the asset ID. But beware, if you test the module in Studio and you save an item and then you test it in the real game, you could overwrite people's data. So just be a bit cautious of that. Just to be on the safe side, you don't have to test it in Studio. And if you want to turn on the save in Studio, you have to edit the module. So that is how it works. Let's go and test it out in a real game and see if everything's alright. Alright, so we're in the game now, and you can see I actually have 400 cash, not 100. That's because I just joined the game. And I accidentally forgot to click on record, and I started pressing the button. So I did have 100 when I started, don't worry. But we should be able to test that out because I've just asked some people to come join the game. So all should be good with that. So I'm just going to click on the button, and you can see that it is incrementing my data store, and then it's updating the points value as well. You can see someone's joined the game, and you can see they have 100 points. Let's see if they go and click the button. And hopefully their points will increase, or maybe they're AFK. But we're going to leave the game in a minute, and we're going to see if our points save. So let's just keep clicking on this button, wait for some more people to join, and hopefully it should save our data. So if we look in the console, nothing should be going wrong. Nope. Everything looks good to me. And you can see, okay, we've got some people clicking the button. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to shut down the server. Let's just remember these guys and see how many points they had. I'm going to shut down the server and see if it saves. So I'm just going to say stop clicking, please. Okay. Remember your money amount. Okay, we're going to shut down the server, and we're going to see if they have the same amount of data. So I've got 1,400, now 1,450. Let's leave the game, rejoin, and see if it loads my money. Alright, I just shut down all servers, so everyone just got kicked from the game. Let's see if their money got reloaded. There we go, I've got my 1,450. Sonic Lua has got his 52,000, and Photon Lightning has got 850, so at the minute everything looks good, and Alter YT has got his 46,000 back as well. So it's saved for everyone. That is pretty cool how it's saved with the DataStore2. So you can see it works really good, and it should work with a ton of players in the game as well. There are quite a few games which use this data store in the game, so it's quite reliable. So I recommend using it. It's really good. So whenever you want to increase a player's amount of cash, say for example if they bought a developer product or they won the game, instead of saying player.points.value, you want to get their data store and you want to increment it. Okay, so instead of updating their value and waiting for it to be saved, you want to update your data store. That is vital, and you also don't want to save this via player removing, because the module already does that, and if you did it again it might mess everything up. So don't worry about that, just increment the value whenever you want to update their currency. Do not do not update their points value, and you should be all good. I will be putting up a few more videos, more advanced, on this topic, so make sure to leave me a like so you know that you want to see some more. I'm going to leave a link to this module in the description of the video, although you should require it. I'm going to leave a link to the dev forum thread as well, so you can have a read of that. This was a basic tutorial on how to make a point system. I'm going to be making more videos on this system soon. It's really cool. It's by Kampfkarren, who made it. I think that's how you pronounce the name. There's also going to be like a tips link if you want to send him something as a thank you if you use this system. So check that out. Thank you very much for watching. If you like this video, please click the like button, make sure to subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.